When you've spent a good chunk of your budget on a cheap trolling motor that sputters, stalls, and leaves you fighting the current, the regret sticks with you long after you've packed the boat away. I've heard that story too many times. You buy the budget model, you get a motor that's louder than a jet ski and can't keep the boat steady when you're trying to drop a perfect cast. That's why I wanted to see if Simrad's RECON Saltwater 72-inch motor actually feels like a smarter buy, or if it's just another pricey piece of kit that looks good on paper but lets you down when the water gets real. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The first hesitation most people have is the price tag. A high-end trolling motor like this one isn't cheap, and you start wondering whether the extra dollars will translate into a noticeable difference on the water. I've spent the last few weeks on a 28-foot offshore cruiser that already has a Simrad navigation suite, and I set the RECON up to see how it integrates, how it handles real-world trolling, and whether the near-silent brushless claim actually matters when you're trying to stay stealthy for a base run. What I found is that the motor's value really shines when you're already in the Simrad ecosystem and you need that laser-sharp control for precise anchoring or slow-speed maneuvering in tight harbors. One of the standout features is the FreeSteer joystick remote. Most trolling motors give you a simple up-down throttle and a left-right steering knob, which can feel clunky when you're trying to hold a perfect position over a reef or a fish-holding structure. The FreeSteer joystick lets you move the shaft in a fluid, two-dimensional motion, almost like piloting a drone. In practice, that means you can nudge the boat a foot to starboard while maintaining a constant 2-knot speed without having to pause and readjust. On a calm morning off the Florida Keys, I was able to keep the boat dead in the water while my partner dropped a line from the stern. The motor held the position with less than a foot of drift, and the joystick felt intuitive enough that I didn't need to glance at the control panel after the initial setup. The precision GPS anchoring is another practical advantage. Simrad's system promises 3-foot accuracy, which sounds impressive until you test it in a real anchoring scenario. I anchored in a sand flat with a 15-pound anchor, and the motor's GPS held the exact spot while the wind picked up. The boat didn't swing like a pendulum, it stayed within a couple of feet of the original spot, which is exactly what you need when you're trying to keep a bait boat or a live well cooler from drifting into a current. For anglers who spend hours waiting for a bite, that kind of stability can be the difference between a day's success and a day's frustration. Durability is often an afterthought when people compare trolling motors, but the RECON uses a carbon fiber shaft that Simrad claims has lifetime durability. In my experience, the shaft felt solid yet light, and after a week of daily use it showed no signs of flex or wear. The carbon construction also helped keep the motor's overall weight down, which is a subtle benefit when you're loading a boat that's already carrying heavy gear, fuel, and a full crew. Because the shaft is available in multiple lengths, you can match it to the transom depth of almost any saltwater boat, from a compact center console to a larger sport fishing vessel, without having to resort to custom adapters. Now, let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. The RECON isn't a plug-and-play unit for every boat. It requires a Simrad system for full functionality, which means you'll need a compatible display or controller already installed. If you're on a generic or older navigation setup, you'll either have to invest in a new Simrad unit or accept a very limited feature set. That extra cost can quickly erode the perceived value if you're not already committed to the Simrad brand. Installation itself isn't rocket science, but it does involve drilling through the transom, routing power cables, and calibrating the GPS module, tasks that most casual boaters prefer to leave to a dealer. For someone who wants a quick, bolt-on solution, the learning curve and installation time can feel like a hurdle. Another practical consideration is the motor's thrust rating versus the boat's displacement. The 72-inch blade is designed for larger saltwater boats that need strong thrust at low speeds, and it delivers that without the usual whining you hear from brushed motors. However, if you're on a 12-foot trailerable boat that only needs a modest 30-pound thrust, you'll be overpaying for power you'll never really use. In that scenario, a smaller, less expensive trolling motor would be more appropriate and would still give you decent control without the extra weight and cost. So, who should buy this motor? If you already own a Simrad navigation suite, spend a lot of time trolling for species that